Hello and welcome to the next edition of our Lviv International Talks. And today we have a great guest from Kyiv who is running since October last year a UNESCO Ukraine desk in Kyiv, Chiara Dezzi Bardeschi. Welcome to our studio in Tvoje Misto, or your city media hub. You've been working recently, from what I know, mainly in countries of Africa. You've been developing many different programs in different countries, launching UNESCO offices, UNESCO desks. And now you work in Ukraine for how much? For how long?
Well, since beginning of October.
8, 9?
Yes, months.
Months. And what can you say so far? What have you learned about Ukraine?
Thank you very much for, first of all, the invitation and the interest for your interest on UNESCO action in Ukraine. As you mentioned, I arrived in Ukraine in October, but UNESCO action and support to Ukrainian people and institutions started since the outbreak of the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 22. And since the beginning, the attention and the main areas of operation of UNESCO has been mainly three. Mm-hmm. The safety of journalists and continuing broadcasting information, especially for access of those information to people and communities, often also with, as you know, shortcut of electricity, of possibility to reach this information. So it was very important to do that, protecting journalists as well to continue on doing their work. The second, the continuity of learning, focusing on distance learning, providing the education system teachers with the opportunity to connect with the students, but also mental health and psychosocial support for children. And this is an area, to come to your question, that with time we see that it's even more relevant and where efforts also will be required not only in the very short term, but also in the medium and long term. How to help children, communities, teachers, the full education system where UNESCO have the specific mandate for this action to overcome traumas, to cope with this and to build a resilient society and knowledge society. And the third, but not least, is the protection of cultural heritage, which is articulated over two main axes. One is the physical protection of culture in all its form, but the second is the livelihood of artists, professionals working in this domain. So the approach is really very human-centered, looking on how to continue support. We know today at more than 1 year time distance from the starting of the invasion that there had been an important, as I mentioned, outflow of professionals, of artists, of creators, but also livelihood of communities of people has been enormously reduced. So this is also considered, all these three areas are contributing to maintain these social and cultural ties with among communities, among people, reestablish a sense of wellness and normalcy, and to enforce resilience.
Can you tell something more in details? How do you do this in terms of making this, helping the livelihood of people who are in culture, and also saving the heritage, which is especially in such a great danger in east and south of Ukraine today?
how do we protect culture? We assist Ukrainians to protect cultural heritage physically. Actually, since August, we have been agreeing and signing a letter of intent with the Ministry of Culture Information Policy about some key priority areas around these two axes that I mentioned. In terms of how do we protect sites, the information, the documentation, assessment of damaged heritage, the monitoring of this is crucial. And what UNESCO has been assisting is building a platform to regularly, daily update and check damage to heritage. This is happening through satellite analysis, image analysis, and accompanied by in the field verification when this is possible.
That's what you did recently in Lviv also, when we had the most recent airstrikes.
Absolutely. It's first done through satellite imagery analysis, 24-48 hours immediately after. And this is giving the magnitude also of the damage. The platform, the list of sites, it's also published on UNESCO webpage for Ukraine. And today we have 265 sites that are damaged. I repeat, verified damage. This does not mean that 265 it's
we have much more.
Yes, and this is also actually confirmed by the rapid damage and need assessment to which UNESCO has been contributed together with the government and also World Bank and other UN, where UNESCO has been particularly coordinating with in the sector of culture, and the impact that has been identified in terms of damage is, in terms of physical damage, 2.6 billion. Losses in terms of revenues losses, in terms of what we will, over the term of 10 years is more than 15 billions. This means US dollars. Yes. So this means that in the next 10 years, to rebuild the cultural sector, we will need almost 7 billion, which is quite impressive as a figure if we consider that this is calculated at February 23, but the situation is still ongoing. I mentioned damage assessment, but this damage assessment is key to understand the consistency of damage, to identify interventions that are required in emergency context, how to repair quickly, intervene, and to prioritize those interventions. So this is another area when we speak about protection, it's not just accounting for damage, but it's already as a two dimension. One is the repair after attacks, but there is ahead a important, consistent work that is done in terms of prevention, in terms of how to prevent, how to mitigate possible eventual damages. And this is done in several ways.
Can you tell me more about these ways? Because it's very interesting to understand what can we do to prevent.
To prevent, for instance, I think that many measures you can also see here in Lviv. You have measures which are very, I would say, maybe symbolic, but very important because they have also a legal implication and advocacy international implication. You see, for instance, here in Lviv, many buildings, even your building, are bearing the Blue Shield's emblem, which is actually connotating this asset as a cultural property. So this is recognized within the framework of the UNESCO 1954 Convention for the Protection of Cultural Heritage in an event of conflict. But beside this, there are very practical measures how to protect open-air monuments in situ, on the place, to reduce eventual impact. No? So also in terms of fireproof, in terms of all this even operation of inventories, for instance, for museums, for collections, are key. Without proper documentation, even in an event of dismantling of collection, of illegal exploitation, without proper documentation and inventory, it's very difficult for security forces, for law enforcement authority to identify and to block this. And this is an area where already since March, the alert for risk of illicit trafficking, illicit export of heritage was also highlighted internationally by UNESCO Director General, alerting neighboring countries and on this risk. And for instance, practical action are that this year in January, we had also some training sessions with regional law enforcement and security border authorities from Ukraine, but also neighboring countries, on how to track, how to identify, to check, and to stop this possible, eventual outflow also of cultural heritage.
Definitely, this is very important work because Ukraine has a lot of heritage, as you know, and UNESCO also has like probably 8 spots in Ukraine that are, or more, that are
8
UNESCO
and,
World Heritage.
As you know now, since 2023, the historic city of Odesa has also been listed as a World Heritage in danger.
And we see how in danger it is. Even this last night it was struck so strongly by Russians. Getting back to the topic of damage itself, not only prevention but we do see now a lot of damage of cultural heritage. Of course, we have our most extreme damage is losing people's lives, but that's one. So we also have organizations working with that, but you work with damage in culture and heritage. Last year we had an interview in the studio with a great architect from France, Martin Duplantier, president of French Architecture Association, and he said that Russians are destroying our heritage, our buildings that are a heritage of many centuries, because they are trying to destroy our identity. Do you agree on that? And do you think there is a way of making justice work in the future in terms of getting reparations for this damage in cultural heritage?
Certainly, culture is an important part of a country identity. It's really a link with the past, but also a very powerful, I would say, driving force for building back better and for resilience of communities. So it has a very relevant and crucial role in this situation of emergency and crisis or conflict, or like now. And that's why it's also critical to protect it now and to intervene And you mentioned also these aspects. We have also to think that when they are so large or damage, we are speaking not only of punctual buildings, but also of cities, historic cities. And I'm thinking, for instance, to the numerous damage of Kharkiv or other cities. So indeed, while looking at recovery and reconstruction from now, because of course it's very important to ensure that people can go back, can have back houses, but at the same time that historic buildings that are there or of cultural values are also in a way protected and integrated in future urban planning, because they also have not only just a spiritual, artistic and cultural values, but they also have an economic value for the future. And if this is not done in ahead, it risks also that much of this is lost.
You mean that the work has to be done already right now?
Yes,
everywhere
it's
where
fundamental.
It's
And that's why when we were saying, before you were asking me, okay, what do you do in terms of repairs, prevention, but even repairs. Now we already started many repairs in Odesa for the museums, in Kiev for museums, but also Kharkiv, Skoroda museums, all these cultural, public, I would say, collective assets, which are a source for history, for identity. This is one dimension. We should not forget people also, because behind buildings there is people,
Sure.
and also all this vital role of artists, of creators, and even for that we have been starting a program to work to ensure their livelihood, that they can continue produce, create, even in difficult conditions. Between August and December, we have been supporting some community and artistic projects, not only in Kiev, in Lviv, in Ivano-Frankivsk, but also Kharkiv, Dnipro, Kherson. And this shows also how culture is a source of resilience. And much more we hope to be able to continue to do this. We started now a second round, but much more, of course, is needed in this sense.
Is there any way people can apply for that? Those artists who need this support?
Absolutely, absolutely. All project call that UNESCO is providing for the country are always open call, and can be accessed through the visible from our website, from our regular official channels. Currently we have, for instance, a call which is open also to invite cultural associations, to invite NGOs to contribute to bring this vital role of culture also as art therapy in this sense. Yes, and actually this is also linked to the key project that is hosting Lviv city, which is the establishment of a cultural hub here in Lviv. It's a project started already since January. Supported by the Spanish cooperation, and is really looking at providing a platform for artists not only of Lviv, but all Ukrainian artists and those who are currently moving here, but also to reconnect with other cities. And let's not forget that Lviv is also a UNESCO creative city. So this is clearly showing the dynamic of this. And to provide as a platform this cultural hub to provide training, capacity buildings, but also co-working space, residency for artists, for instance. And we are currently working on the physical rehabilitation of the premises, and we hope very soon to start the programs. We are currently working also through consultations with the association, the large community, not only of cultural associations and practitioners, but also in youth association, educational areas, because everything is interconnected. And this is also one of the aspects of UNESCO mandate, to have this transversal, I would say, approach.
Thank you for that. And I do think that we can also help with promoting all these projects and inform our community in Lviv. But culture and heritage is something where UNESCO is known in Lviv already, because as you mentioned, we are a creative UNESCO city. We are World Heritage and UNESCO World Heritage, but also, if I'm correct, UNESCO from its very beginning, since World War II, was created with the aim to help education, and to, especially in the war and post-war time. I think this is a very big challenge for Ukraine, especially nowadays, and in all conversations with different key stakeholders, from businesses, government, NGOs, and culture people, where we have these conversations, we hear that all of them are saying we need to make our education even better, and we need to save our education. What is your point on that, and what is UNESCO doing here in Lviv and in Ukraine?
Yeah, absolutely. While working in supporting education, there is this two double aspect approach, which are really concurrent in a way, complementary. One is to work in what we call education in emergency, to ensure really that children can continue. But also it's very important already, and this is the strategy of UNESCO as for the education for all approach in the framework of the Sustainable Development Goal 4 for education, is really to ensure and prepare long term. And while we are and this is very important, because actually we have been starting also working on policies in education, supporting the Ministry of Education and Science in this process, in the priority identified. As I mentioned, for education, in these two tracks that we are currently implementing, we have one which is continuity of learning. We have been distributing since till December more than 50,000 devices to teachers in all Ukraine regions with the ministry
for distance learning.
Distance learning, but at the same time working with teachers, working with ministries, working with institutions to work on the pedagogical aspects, how to bring in also mental health and psychosocials, how to integrate, for instance, social and emotional learning. So all these innovative also skills which are fundamental also for more long term. Mental health and psychosocials. We have done with the ministry, and we have supported the ministry in doing this thorough assessment of facilities in mental health and psychosocial support within the education systems. Based on that, and an agreed roadmap with all partners, national, international, working in this domain, as you said, there are many actors. We started now also working on training, from policies now to training of psychologists in schools. Now that we are speaking, there is a 4 weeks, 1 month training for 100 psychologists in school that is going on. These psychologists will, at their turn, continue to train almost at the end 15,000 psychologists and 20,000 teachers to be able to provide services for children. So it's not just a provision on the spot, to reply to your question after my longer description, but it's really how to contribute to improve the system in the more long term.
Thank you. And I suppose much of that, something of that is also being implemented in Lviv?
The training, yes, the training for education is, as I mentioned, there are distribution that has been done in all regions, especially those who, according to priorities, according to certain criteria where this was more needed. Distance learning does not substitute in presence. As you know, is becoming more hybrid format according to where shelter in schools are available or not, but also is a way also to keep ties with the students who are with families who now are out of the country. And this is also another important point, because in terms of policies, analysis, in terms of, I would say, this more possibility, creating the framework for these students also to be reintegrated in Ukrainian system, UNESCO has analyzed almost more than 100 policy structure and infrastructure in European countries to understand how to facilitate that there is a recognition, and this also they can easily reintegrate. But also to look at the long term. We, since last year, 22, with the UNICEF, we have been assisting the ministry in setting up this digital platform for students to access and conduct the examination to pass from high school to university. There were more than 200,000. This platform is still active this year, so is building in an emergency, has been also contributed to strengthen the national system and to enable it to be not just for one ad hoc intervention, but also with a more long-term impact on the education system.
I do believe this is a very modern approach, and thank you for everything you're doing. And to end this conversation, I would just ask two things. One about Lviv, as we are sitting here, what is your reflection? I don't know, have you been here for many times already, but can you say, what do you see positive sides of the city development, and maybe you see something that could be improved as well? And the second thing about the strengths of Ukraine and Ukrainians, what do you see? Is there something particular you learned through the time you were here?
Absolutely, I think your two questions are connected, and I had already the opportunity to be in Lviv several times, not much. As I hoped there will be more other positive opportunities to be here. And I think that it's really an incredible city, and very vital. I'm not speaking also about the monuments and its architecture, but I'm speaking also of the energies of professionals, of these vital forces that are here, certainly. and this is something that I think I've been seeing and learning also from Ukraine more in general. As many of I particularly appreciated, and I think this is something when looking at, for instance, cultural expressions, many are surprised to see is how the sector is resilient. I saw empty museums becoming a live center where people, families are there, are going through their past, their present, but also the future. I shared the time with people also in the shelter waiting, and it has been also a way to know the human side of this incredible country and population. So really this resilience, it's what I think it's a very important aspect, and what also what we can contribute has been witnessing in a way.
Thank you. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. Thank you for all the work UNESCO is doing in Ukraine, and I do hope that we will really have more chances to have meetings with positive reasons to meet here, and see you next time.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for your attention to UNESCO action in Ukraine.
Thank you.